Thanks for joining us today. My name is Russ Nolte. I'm the team leader at KW St. Louis in St. Louis, Missouri. I know there's some people on here from elsewhere. So first of all, how's everyone doing today? Anyone care to share some wins? Gretchen, you thumbs up us. Any wins for the day?
I put a dress on. That is a win. I went and delivered closing gifts to clients who we haven't been able to go to their closing. They left things on their front porch and took fun pictures. So that was our win.
Nice. Awesome. Any other wins? Chris, what's going on in your world?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
I too got dressed today. I don't have on stretchy pants. I put on jeans and I was able to tighten my belt, so that was good. And I've done 2 listing appointments the last 2 days.
Hey, nice.
Yeah.
Just for those who don't know you, those appointments, have you been doing them live and in person? What's been your strategy?
So these have actually been phone appointments. So a little bit different, not a Zoom meeting. They're sending me pictures of their houses. But it was a good starting point to get the process rolling.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, the topic of our meeting today is to talk a little bit about the stimulus package and how it can be a benefit for you as a realtor, as a 1099 realtor, and maybe both from a perspective of those of you running a team and those of you who are, solo doing this on your own. And our guest speaker is Andy Hannigan. He's an agent at the KW St. Louis Market Center, also a real estate investor, also a KW Maps coach. Andy, why don't you take it away and tell us what you're seeing across the country and in your own business in terms of the stimulus package and how it's working for agents.
Well, first of all, it hasn't worked yet for anybody because the SBA is having this very aggressive timeline of wanting the banks, the SBA preferred banks, to get this out within 15 days. Now, I believe that's 15 business days. It could be banking days, yet there's no definitive answer on that yet, mostly because when people were writing this legislation and these programs, they're going back still as of this morning and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And sometimes they're crossing the I's and dotting the T's is what we're finding out. And so bear with me. There's 2 things. Number one is I'm not a CPA and I'm not an attorney. I'm a business coach, and I found out the importance of this last Tuesday and wanted to make sure I learned as much about this to bring that value and make sure that all of the agents in my life, including my coaching clients, my employees, and my KWYP members, and everyone in my market centers were aware of this so they don't lose out on this opportunity just because of either ignorance or because they were overwhelmed by the process and they didn't know if they would do all this work for nothing if they were denied. Well, just last Thursday, we were on a call with Keith Hall. He's the president of the National Association of the Self-Employed, and he's spoke on the House floor about these matters. He's lobbied for us, and he understands this at a pretty good level. According to my CPA, his math is off because he's audited, and I sent that video to him to review. Yet, we do have some things that I will give you from him, who's kind of more on the ground floor with this. Number one is, yes, you qualify. He says that blanketly. And I tend to probably agree that that's the case. 1099s, freelancers, they do qualify. Sole proprietors, you qualify for certain loan programs. We'll go over those in a minute. Yet I have a FAQ, a frequently asked questions from the New York Times, written and updated, I believe, on the 3rd of April, that I can get to you guys. And looking through all of these things, it looks like it's more about who doesn't qualify as opposed to who does. And the biggest thing is, if you don't want to work and you quit voluntarily, you don't qualify. That's about the biggest thing that there is. Yet again, where normally we wouldn't have certain programs, whether it's unemployment assistance or benefits, or these actual loans to help us keep our people employed, we qualify. Number two is, yes, even if you don't have employees, the money will be forgiven. This loan is labeled as a loan, though it's written and it writes like a grant. It's at the very least a forgivable loan. So there's a lot of coaches out there, a lot of people that are saying, not having read this and not talking to the right people, this is a loan, this is a loan, this is a loan, don't think it's a grant. Well, as long as you do certain things and you work with your CPA and or attorney, this behaves as an end result like a grant. Because Russ and I were talking about this yesterday, and that's the big thing that I want you guys to understand. The way this is written is, if you don't fire people and take this money and hoard it, it's designed to keep your people employed. All right. So you can't just cut corners here, and you're being able to cut less and less corners as this legislation gets rolled out and people understand it more. And the people that wrote it understand what the hell they were doing more. And they're finding out that you can't necessarily just fire everybody and then take that money. You have to actually show that after June 30th that these people are needing to be on your team. This isn't just free money. It's money to keep your people and your business running at a high level. And then number three, it will not be taxable rather. Now, when I say this will not be taxable, will be the three loan program options, the SBA loan program options. Now, if you get your unemployment, I want to make sure you're clear. If you file for unemployment and you receive it, that is taxable. According to anything I've read so far, that is taxable. That's not going to change. Any benefit assistance you get from unemployment is taxable. That's not going to change now. What changes is the length of your unemployment. Most states grant 26 weeks. According to the University of Google, Missouri grants 20 weeks. And now this tags on another 13 weeks onto it. And then you also get some kind of federal unemployment as well in the form of $600 a week. So I think Missouri's at like 324. Let me see here. Yeah, they're at 324 a week, and the federal will be an additional $600. Now, we'll get to that later. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. I wanted to make sure we were differentiating between the loan program, which is not taxable, and even if it is forgiven, and then the unemployment benefits, which are taxable, and if you do apply for those. All right, so the three loan programs we have now, there's the two different types of EIDL. So the first one, the EIDL, and EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan. There's an emergency funds up to $10,000 is what you can receive. Now, if you don't have any employees, you're probably only going to get $1,000 up front, and over time you might be able to get up to $9,000. Yet it's the people who own and run teams that will apply for that will get the full $10,000, and that can be forgivable. Again, that's just changed as of this morning. It used to be anybody, whether you're a sole proprietor or not, could get $10,000. That's not the case anymore. They look back at that and say, okay, if I have a team with 20 people on it and I'm getting the same relief as somebody, emergency relief as somebody who's just a single agent, I don't know how fair that is. And so they're going back on that. So read up on that, talk to your CPAs about how that looks like. There's certain types of situations where and scenarios where you can get more money, though 1,000 is what you're going to get if you're a single agent. The second loan program is the PPP. That's the one that we're going to spend the most time on because that's the one that most of us qualify for. The other EIDL loan, that's the second one. That one is if you own and have own a business with 100 plus employees. Not even the Loken Group would apply for that. The Loken Group is one of the largest teams in our entire company, and they have 95 people. They're not going to apply for that, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that today. The PPP is the big one. That stands for the Payroll Protection Program. And what we understand is a couple things. And again, I'll give you the most up-to-date stuff. So I'll be reading from notes because there are changes that happen with this. You get up to $2 million in assistance over the next 8 weeks. So chances are none of us are going to have $2 million worth of overhead and payroll over the next 8 weeks. If you do, hire a coach and slash some of those budgets, some of your budget right away. You can count your income as a sole proprietor. That's something that was in the air earlier. Now you can count your income as a sole proprietor. Commissions you can roll into there. There's nothing that was, as of Monday, there was nothing that specifically identified commissions. Now they're saying as a sole proprietor, or if you're a 1099 and you get paid by commissions, that does work as of today. And I keep having to say as of today because some of this stuff is new. Payroll, nobody in your payroll can, in this particular situation, can get a reimbursement or any type of protection above $100,000. So whether it's you or somebody else on your team, if anyone makes over $100,000, they're only going to be covered up to $100,000. And again, that's within the next 8 weeks. If you're looking to do some easy math, some rough math, your payroll, your total payroll that you have up to $100,000, you're going to divide that. That's your yearly payroll. You're going to divide that by 12, and then you're going to multiply that by 2.5. That's the money that you're standing to get for the next 8 weeks. And right now it's a lump sum. It could end up being something that's feathered out over time. That's how that's going to work. And the SBA is giving you that money. And we'll talk about how to apply for that later. So that's the money you're standing to get over the next 8 weeks. Now, as real estate agents, what that is going to cover is not just your payroll, though, your utilities, your mortgage, your rent, and what it won't cover will be inventory. So don't go using that money to go buy signs. This is about protecting people and keeping people comfortable and where they're supposed to be in their working environment, not to go out and buy extra things. So understand that if you can tie it to a person right now, as it stands today, you can probably justify that with your CPA or attorney that you can make that work, and you can justify that that money should be forgiven, that money spent. Okay. And really all expenses by employers are going to be made employable. And again, if you don't know the PPP, they have two different names. There's the 7A and the 7B. The PPP is the 7A. The emergency fund would be the 7B. So the 7A is what we're going to spend the most time on. You have to have an EIN of some sort, and payroll has to be W-2. If you're looking for, if you have agents that are 1099s, they got to apply on their own as of right now to make things a little more complicated, yet it still makes sense because 1099s, technically they're working with you, not under you like W-2s are. That's the way they're choosing to look at this. Now, here's the big thing that you want to do. This is designed to keep people on payroll. It's also designed to keep people getting relatively the same amount of money during this pandemic as before this pandemic. If you slash your payrolls, or if everyone takes a haircut, which a lot of teams are having those conversations, do we want to let one person go, or does everyone want to take a little bit off the top of their payroll or their salary? Well, as long as everybody stays and all of your payroll stays within 25% of what it originally was before this pandemic, you should be fine. You won't get penalized. You'll get the paid in full. As soon as you go below, let's say that you slash it to 26%, well, then they're going to ask that you pay some of that back at a 4% interest rate. Okay, so make sure we're not getting rid of people. And there's ambiguity in there. There's some gray areas. I was asked about specifically today because I have specifically a director of operations that wants to go into become a real estate agent full time. It was designed before this pandemic ever started that she was going to go part-time for April and then full-time on her own in May. And now we got to go back and go, okay, maybe we have to pay you 3/4 pay right now. And whether or not we can raise my pay, which would be great, and let her feather out would be another thing. We don't know the answer to that. So if you're looking to get creative, I would challenge you to be conservatively creative and stay above that 25% threshold and figure it out on the back end with your CPA. I'd rather you get that money and get it all forgiven than having you play the creative game and the government saying, yeah, we're not agreeing with you there. And that's advice not just coming from me as a coach that I give my own clients. That's advice that's coming from people that have been explaining this to me over the last 7 days. And then again, there's other percentages in there. I wish I had those for you. He rattled those off really quickly. About an hour before this call, I only had a half hour with this guy who's not only a MAPS coach and and works with this, but one of his friends is a congressman that's also his CPA that's been working on this at a high level. So as soon as I get that information, Russ, I'll give it to you. You can get to everybody else. That's really the most we have there. It's just as long as you don't spend that money on more than 25% of payroll, rent, and utilities, you stay with that percentage, you're fine. And outside of that, and the SBA is going to just argue that you have a lot of bloat and you don't need all that rent. You don't need all those offices, whatever it may be. And so you want to play smart with that too. right? If there's probably an office or two that if it's above 25%, that you're out of the SBA's model, so to speak, and they can't go to the Treasury and go, yeah, I think they should cover this. They won't agree with you there. That's the most I have really there. Again, you're gonna have to requalify in the background or in arrears, I guess, after June 30th. So make sure that you're running a tight ship. You understand your expenses and everything you're cutting or not cutting, and recording all of that between now when you apply and June 30th. And then if you do have people that you planned on firing or letting go or whatever, however way you want to term that, and you just couldn't, then make sure you have that documented. And if you have anybody on a performance improvement plan, if they're on notice and they signed off on that, have those documents available so you have that on record to show the SBA, to show if the Treasury takes this over, which they're trying to do, to show them that, hey, these people I was going to let go anyway. And that way you know that they weren't necessarily they weren't accounted for during those 8 weeks. They shouldn't have been.
Andy, talk a little bit more about the people on this call who are very small teams, maybe their payroll is just themselves. What's the first step? Where do we go first to learn the fine print on this?
Well, there's a couple websites you can go to. If you want to go to the fine print, let's say if your CPA is like my CPA, they are bombed right now. And I'm just happy. He's taking my call. I said, I'll call you at midnight. So we have conversations at midnight that last 2 hours sometimes. Yet, if you don't have that luxury, or if you don't want to sleep, or if you do want to sleep, SBA.gov, SBA.gov, Russ, can you type that in there? /disaster. That'll be one website you can go to learn for this. Now, I went there to look at this, to kind of sort through this for you guys. This is the most user angry of all of them, and it shouldn't be, and it is. So NASE, the National Association of the Self-Employed.org, NASE.org is another one. And then the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, uschamber.com. Those are going to be some of the more helpful ones. And again, of those, the most helpful was probably NASE was probably my favorite as far as just getting that information right away. I'll also send, Russ, I'll send it to you. I'll put my email in here if you guys would email me as well. If you don't, just email Russ. If you want to email me, this will remind me later today because this is my coaching day. So I get on coaching calls to teach this to everybody else as soon as this is over. Email me and I'll give you all the resources that I have that make sense to you. I got a 37-minute video. My CPA says the president of the NASE, his math is wrong, so don't listen to his math. Everything else checks out though. And that's the easiest video and the simplest to understand. And the one that you can pass on later. Russ and I were talking about this yesterday and we were pretty excited about it. We can share this with other people, right? And Russ will talk about that. I mean, actually, Russ, I moved my 2:30 call so we can talk longer if need be. Yet we can talk about how to bring value to your audiences making this happen with this information. Chris Casey already. Go ahead.
Let's put a pin in that for a second and go to Chris Casey. I want to talk about what you're alluding to there, Andy. Chris, you've already made application for this. For those who are like trying to figure out, this sounds complicated a little bit. Tell us what the process looked like for you. Where did you go? What did the process look like?
Okay. So first I'll say I did this actually for my husband's business. He's a chiropractor. So if somebody's done it for their real estate business, I would love to hear how that process was for you. We had to do it through PNC, which is our business bank. It required a ton of PDFs to be uploaded in a certain format, in a certain, you had to go through a certain, it started with your monthly payrolls. So I didn't know that. Everything I pulled out of QuickBooks, so I'm sure you guys have that or your accountants have access to all that information. But it was very detailed and it was very structured, and I was unprepared for that when I sat down at 5:30 in the morning on Saturday to apply. So PNC didn't have their portal open until 1 o'clock on Saturday morning. So we've applied. We haven't heard anything yet. We knew that it was going to take a little bit of time. We were sort of fast tracked because we'd been talking to PNC all week long, so they were expecting us. But I don't, beyond that, we needed to have monthly payroll PDFs starting April of 2019 through March of 2020. We had to have quarterly 940s, 941s, and 944s. Those are your tax documents that you should have received for your quarterly payroll. We had to have proof of health insurance paid by the company. If you had a retirement fund, you had to have proof of those payments. I think that's it. I think those were all the documents that we had to upload.
And I suspect if you're a sole proprietor, just 1099 for yourself, I'm assuming that some of those things are not applicable.
Right. So as a 1099, I only applied for the EIDL for myself. And that's through my bank, which is a different bank than PNC. And those EIDL, well, actually, I'm sorry, those are through the SBA. Those are not through your actual bank, but there was a link on US Bank for me to do that through. So you need to have your bank numbers, your routing numbers, where you want the money to be put through. And then it also figures, so it also PNC asked for our individual monthly payroll amounts. There was a line in each month. We had to type that in. And then it actually formulated how much we would get based on the numbers I had typed in. So I guess as long as all of that jives when somebody goes to look through it, it was a lot of information, then we should be able to get that.
So here's what I want everyone to hear. You can probably go to your local bank. Not every bank is going to have this, the right credentials, but like I know US Bank, I know PNC, you can go to the bank and somewhere at the top, it says something like COVID-19 relief, or I can't remember how it was worded at US Bank, but you can click there and you can find links to both of these programs, the PPP and the EIDL. And the EIDL application is short, right, Chris? I mean, it's like 5 minutes.
Super fast.
And that's the one that's a $10,000, if I understand it correctly, it's a $10,000 like fast emergency fund.
Yep. You
It's
should know within 3 days, I think is what they said on US Bank.
Yeah. So so any questions for Chris or Andy so far in this?
Russ, can I mention something about applying to the bank? When you call your bank, make sure and ask them if they're SBA preferred bank. And then on top of that, it's always going to be advantageous if you can call your bank, because they already have all your articles of incorporation and everything they need, all your banking documents to open those accounts. And if you go to a bank that you don't have a relationship with, you're going to have to start over with all of that. And you're going to have to track that down. If tracking down paperwork is a hassle for you, then you want to make sure that you go to your bank, especially. That's the big thing that I want to make sure you're aware of. And number two, and this was, as of this morning, brand new information for us. CPAs that are allowed to do it, originate these applications for you, they get a 1% origination fee. And I've just actually thinking about, just listening to what Chris Casey had to say, thinking about that, I just texted my CPA and said, hey, is this true? Are you hearing this on your side? Because we always want to verify this, guys. This is stuff that is not set in stone until it's set in stone. Kind of like we don't celebrate until things are funded. None of us want to celebrate until we actually have the money and it's forgiven. Yet, keep verifying all of this. If that's the case and you love your CPA, what better way to get them referrals and make them some money than this opportunity? So I just want to make sure that was out there for you guys while we're considering all this.
Andy, to your point, things are changing, sounds like daily, by the minute. So I want to kind of get my finger on the sense of urgency on this. Is it going to be the people that applied on this day will get, whatever was the case on that day, and then it could change? Or how do you feel like that's going to play out?
Okay, so the one thing I did, and this was what led to a 90-minute conversation with my CPA on Tuesday night, is we have a coaches kind of powwow where we celebrate best practices. We talk about what's new and hot in the market and what value should we be bringing to our coaching clients. And this was the thing that was brought up. A gentleman went on there. He's the one with the friend. It's a congressperson. And he said, I don't know how long this is going to be here. They're averaging 20,000 applications every half hour. This might not be here longer. So I call my CPA right away and just to say, hey, I know you're busy. Is this something I should be doing? I got people I want to make sure I can keep on payroll if this gets worse and worse and worse, because I'm not thinking about April. We're fine in April. I'm not thinking about May. We're fine about May. I'm thinking about June, July, and August and how bad we're going to be there, right? And so he said, look, yeah, that's true that there's a limited amount of funds, yet this is also the first of this is the third of probably 6 buckets. We've already had one stimulus plan, a second. Now things are starting to make sense for us small business owners. They're finally getting to us at a high level, a noticeable level. And yet that's bucket 3. We're still waiting for 4, 5, and 6 to fall. There might be more funding. There might be more of the same, or there might be a continuation of what we're doing, or something completely different. Yet there's probably replenishing this. So my advice to you, just like with all great realtors, being aggressive rarely penalizes us. It always behooves us to be aggressive if we can. So I'd get it done ASAP. I'd inconvenience your CPA now and understand you're going to have to probably buy them some drinks later because they are slammed right now. My CPAs won't work in 20-hour days to make all this work and he's a small business CPA. He's keeping all of these businesses afloat. And that takes a lot of time. So just make sure that you are aggressive and get that information out now. That would be my advice. That's the advice I'm giving anybody that asks me.
I'm not sure if this is not endorsed by Russ or any leadership, but I saw.
By the way, we are not CPAs or attorneys, so none of this is endorsed by Russ, Keller Williams, the Missouri Real Estate Commission. This is blame all of this on Andy.
Perfect.
Yeah, blame it on Andy. And that's Hannigan, Hannigan. Go, Gretchen.
I applied for both just to see what would shake out because I do have an LLC. And I actually real time just got a call from my local bank and she left a voicemail and got an email saying that my application is in processing. So I can post on Facebook whatever I find out from my local banker. I use US Bank, and she just left me a voicemail saying she wanted to chat about my application. So I'll
How long ago did you apply?
When Chris was applying, we were texting each other. So Sunday.
Good. And in the SBA, they're rather aggressive. I don't know if I said this on this call or not. I've had a lot of these today. They are pushing for banks. Banks are going to be the distributors for this. They just don't have the bandwidth. So they're pushing for the banks to have this out in 15 days. And banks are going, that's very aggressive. And they're saying, yeah, so is this pandemic. And so that's where they're at with this information. They want to get it out quickly. They want to get the funds out quickly.
Now, for the realtors on this, and I see some non-realtors, and that's great. There's a lead gen opportunity here for all of us. Andy, talk to us about how one that's on this call who wants to bring value could use this situation as a lead gen.
Sure.
Opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, Russ and I were talking about this yesterday, and last week we were brainstorming with a KWYP member, Keller Williams Young Professionals. We had a chapter member who's new to being on her own, and she also has a husband who's a financial planner that's been researching a lot of this himself. And he has a document that's probably needs to be changed now because I read through it. And it just offers all this information for small business owners. She put that on social media, and she's not the most gregarious social media participant. And she just said, any attention all small business owners, if you'd like to know about this SBA loan and how this applies to you and how you can get these loans forgiven, please put your email address below. I'm going by memory, which is completely fallible right now. Though I believe she had 65 is what I counted email addresses in the comments section that just added to her data bank. And those are people she can bring value to, not only her, yet her husband, right? And as long as they perpetually are staying up to date with all of this information, they can continually touch them and say, here are the changes, here are the changes, here are the changes. And what we've been talking about for about 2 weeks now, starting with Gary Keller's live stream, was we want to start lead generating with heart now to gain mind share before we gain market share. What better way to gain market share later than to help people out, these small business owners that are just absolutely dying right now? I mean, look at any restaurant owner, ask them how they're doing, right? If you can bring value and not just ask them, how are you doing? Then I think that at the very least, they're going to think of you, and probably only you, unless anyone else is parading this information out. There are plenty of people that have 1-sheeters about this, 3-sheeters about this, some that are simple, some that are confusing. What I'd say is just make sure they're the most up to date. I mean, whenever I have an article that I'm sending out, now I'm checking the date. And if it's three days out, I'm kind of looking at that and saying, well, I got to at least preface that this might not be the case anymore. Right? And they're amending things daily. Russ, somebody private messaged me and I responded to you. So whoever private messaged me, I'll get to you in a second. But that would be the information and that we could get out to people, to our data banks, to our social media audience, and capture those emails and that contact information so that you can help people. And then Betsy asked, let's see, do you have a 1-sheeter? I do. Just email me. I'll get all that out to you in one big fell swoop later. My last coaching call ends at 8:30 p.m. So it'll be after that. I'll get you that information, whatever you guys need. Betsy said, is there a difference if you are a PC? So far, no. I mean, nothing I've read, it does not matter. I wouldn't overthink this, guys. If you're a 1099, a sole proprietor, everything more complicated than that, as long as you have under 100 employees, I think you're fine. And I would just go and push for this. This is me knowing what I know now. I would push for this and then ask questions later. You can always plead a case later. Here's the other thing that Russ, that we talked about yesterday. You and I both have multiple businesses, 2 in common. We have a real estate team and we have a coaching business, right? We can apply for each business up to $100,000. Again, if I made $90,000 in my coaching business last year and I made $100,000, right? SBA, Treasury, nobody wants anybody to make over $100,000 and be relieved of it. They think you're doing all right if you made more than that. If you're not, then you need to have better spending habits. That's my take on it. That's Andy Hannigan's opinion on what the SBA is saying with that. Yet that's the cap at $100,000 for anybody. Okay. And just, you have to justify that. My CPA, I asked him, well, what's in good ethics? Because I had like 7 LLCs. I thought I had 5. I ended up having like 7, I think. And 2 haven't had activity in the last 3 years. I can't justify that there's any hardship done to my LLCs, to my businesses based on this pandemic, because I haven't used those. I haven't bought a house to renovate in 2 years. Had nothing to do with the pandemic. It had everything to do with everyone else overpaying for houses. So we have to think about that also, though. If you have multiple LLCs, apply for each one.
Is this helpful, everyone? I'm seeing nods.
Good.
So what I want to just say again is go do your own research, but understand that like this isn't something to just ignore, because it may be an awesome opportunity for you. It may be an awesome opportunity for your clients. Andy, anything else you want to share?
Like I said, apply for unemployment if you're having challenges duplicating the amount of money you made this time last year or this time 6 weeks ago. Apply for it. Again, the only group that I saw on the FAQ, and I'll send you the FAQ along with the 1-sheeter, that is denied unemployment would be people who voluntarily are quitting their jobs, not laid off, not furloughed, whatever the hell you want to call it. Those are the people that aren't getting it. You get about 324. Again, my memory does not serve me correctly. It's somewhere in the 320 range in Missouri a week. On top of that, you're getting another $600. They really, the unemployment benefits before the pandemic was designed to do about 40 to 45% of the average person's income per week, average Americans. Now they're throwing in on top of that an additional $600 a week, and that could be until the end of the year at this point. So see if you qualify for that, and there's plenty of different math equations you can do. I wouldn't worry about it. Apply for it, then play with that later to see what you're going to get. Help is there. Help is there for small business owners, and we're getting the relief that we probably deserved 12 years ago or whatever. Yet we're getting it now.
That's it.
Yeah, and the one sheet, everybody's asking me for anything. My email is at the very top of this chat. Because of bandwidth issues with myself, because I'm having these conversations all the time, I can get that to you this evening, about 9 o'clock Central Time, 9 p.m. Central Time. I'll send this out to everybody. I'll just blind CC all of you.
All right, Andy, I will get you a roster of everybody on the call.
Cool. I appreciate it.
Nikki, send me a roster of everybody on the call.
Okay.
What would we do without our virtual assistants? Oh my goodness. Anybody have anything?
Oh, I should say that the virtual assistants, depending on the company, if they're American-owned companies, they are your employee. You can count them to as per my virtual assistants.
If they're American-owned yet living elsewhere, you can count them. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, the company that employs them, for instance, we have Cyberbackers. Cyberbacker is our employee because they're based out of Utah, right? That's coming from them and not anybody else. That's the only person I've talked to. So double, triple, quadruple check all of that. Yet make sure that you understand that. If you do have employees that are virtual assistants not living on U.S. soil.
Great tip. Hey, tomorrow we're going to be doing a segment at 2 o'clock on working with investors. I've got Jim Manning from Three Doors as our guest. Thursday, I'm going to be talking to a newer agent and how he is working through this pandemic. His name is Josh Stockstill. He's out of St. Charles, Missouri. And then on Friday, I've got top 10 agents, Jenny and Alan Brake, talking about how their team is overcoming obstacles during this challenging time. So get RE training now is the way to get on to this. 2 o'clock every day. See you later, guys. Have a great one. Bye.
Thank you.